Welcome into 247 Sports Live. Hey, it's only May, but if you're here, you know college football never sleeps, and we are keeping you in the know. I'm Grace Remington. Before we begin, please like this video and subscribe to the 247 Sports YouTube channel. A lot to get to today, so let's give you the rundown. The biggest news all over social media. EA Sports College Football is back. We are giving you all the details there. One of the cover athletes of the game, Michigan running back Donovan Edwards, will also be joining us. Dabo Sweeney making headlines with some of his platitudes once again. And we're taking a look at Arkansas's upcoming 2024 season. But let's get into the biggest news of the day. EA Sports has revealed a release date for college football 25. It'll be July 19th, and Matt Brown has been all over it from the start. Matt, thanks for joining us. We have two covers out for the first college football game in over a decade. Your initial thoughts?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here, Grace. I think this is really exciting for longtime fans of college football. There's a lot of different directions that EA could have gone with this cover. There were certainly a lot of people that suggested they maybe put Nick Saban or some historic coaches on the cover. There were plenty of legends and high-achieving players that were denied the opportunity to be on a cover because of the NCAA, pushing this game to the shelves for the last decade. This is going to be the first year that we have current players on the cover here. And this year, I think EA did a good job of picking people from across the country, people that play different positions, and kind of threading that needle between existing production and potential and maybe general popularity. If you want to tell the story of what college football is going to be for this coming season, I think they did a great job, and I'm glad that current athletes are now able to be a part of that experience.
Yeah, so it'll be Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, and Donovan Edwards on the cover there, and those covers look great. Now, some of the news revolving around this game is the EA CEO Andrew Wilson recently said on an earnings call that they're trying to insert ads into the game. Gamers aren't too happy about this, but Matt, how do you feel?
Yeah, I wrote about this recently, and while I don't expect it to be the case for this particular game, I actually think there's a way that advertising units can be a bigger part of AAA video game releases for college football or potentially other sports games that would really benefit the college sports industry. I think many people watching this understand that it's a major source of revenue, particularly for big time schools, to sell sponsorship rights, to sell signage, to sell advertising elements within the stadiums themselves. And most of the time, those aren't completely depicted in video games or in digital products, because it's easier and it's more economical to just do one national ad buy or just put one company on all of those things. I think if EA and potentially a company like Learfield or Playfly or some of these schools want to find ways to earn a couple of extra bucks, which I'm sure if everyone's been following the headlines, everyone needs to do now that players are going to be getting revenue sharing in the near future. This could be a way to do it that is not only not obtrusive to the consumer, but actually enhances the realism of the stadium product itself. I think as soon as you start putting in complete commercials, just like you have in a television experience, that's where you're going to see a lot of people out and out rebel.
Right. Well, it makes sense with where the business is going. Now, there's been a leak making the rounds on X/Twitter saying that the Heisman edition will cost nearly $150 for a copy. You've been all over this on Extra Points, the different editions, the pricing. Can you tell us what will be the difference between the standard and the deluxe edition here?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has that kind of money, you can buy both Madden and college football together in bulk and save a little bit of money, which I think is honestly not a bad idea, given how much the fan bases for those products overlap. The biggest addition between standard and some of these upgraded packages, not just for college football but for AAA video game titles in general, is typically with extra features involving Ultimate Team. If you're somebody that likes to play Ultimate Team, if you want to compete online and assemble, a dream team roster of your players, this upgraded edition will save you money. You'll get some extra packs. You'll be able to get to play with some of these cover athletes, and you'll get your team off to a head start. If you're someone that kind of budgets for, I'm going to be spending money on Ultimate Team during the season. If you're just focusing on the single player experience, I don't think that the expanded edition is necessarily going to be worth it for you right now, unless you also want to play Madden, in which case might be able to save a little bit of money.
Okay, so you mentioned Ultimate Team. That's become a staple in all of the EA Sports games. How will they approach Ultimate Team in the college football game?
Yeah, this is, I think, a really fascinating question because so much has changed, not just in college football, but in really the video game industry since the last time we had one of these games. If you look back to the last EA Sports college football title back in 2014, there was an ultimate team function. Individuals could still, buy packs and complete challenges and assemble kind of a dream team roster, but it was definitely not the most important game mode. And online gaming in general was not nearly as ubiquitous as it is now. If you had an Xbox 360, a lot of those systems didn't even come with built-in Wi-Fi. You had to go, get something, a USB external adapter. Now it's become a major moneymaker, not just for EA's flagship titles like Madden and FIFA, but for NBA 2K and MLB The Show and many systems everywhere, which has led to quite a bit of consumer consternation, because if you grew up playing these college football games, the core game mode was historically Dynasty. It's the idea of taking some low-level Sun Belt or Conference USA team to becoming a 5-star champion. What the Ultimate Team mode is going to look like and how it's going to differentiate itself, I think, from Madden or perhaps some of the other things on the market is going to be one of the interesting industry storylines here. But every conversation I've had with people at EA, both on the record and on deep background, please don't tell anybody I was talking to you, Matt, has been that EA intends to really focus on the Dynasty mode experience. So I think if you're concerned that all this game is going to be a mechanism to try to get you to buy Ultimate Team packs, I don't think you're going to find that experience as overwhelming as you might in other AAA game titles.
All right, so we have the launch dates, we have the covers, we've had a few more other rumors and leaks, but the full release is tomorrow. Are there any more hints you can tell us?
Well, I think the good news I can share for consumers, for people that are really invested in this game, is that tomorrow's not going to be the last time you hear from EA Sports. It's not going to be the last time you hear from other 247 reporters who I think are on this beat. Certainly won't be the last time that you hear from me. There's going to be other kind of drips of information and features and kind of behind the scenes looks at this game, really leading up until launch. So if for tomorrow, if you're like, it didn't answer all my questions, like, good news. They're going to keep talking. I will say, based on what I've seen from the announcement tomorrow, if you want to get excited about seeing so many major college football traditions depicted in full PlayStation 5 graphic glory, you're going to love what you see tomorrow. I think if the goal is to get people hyped and excited about this release, you will not be disappointed tomorrow.
Ooh, okay. That is quite the tease. Before I let you go, first time in over a decade we've had this game. Which player are you most excited to play with?
I got to tell everybody here, like, I enjoy this game just as much as every other consumer does, even though it's become a major part of my beat. But when I play the game, I went to Ohio State. I grew up rooting for that team. I can't play that team if I'm playing on a video game because that's on easy mode. Like, when I first get sticks, I'm grabbing Kent State. I'm grabbing Akron. I'm grabbing somebody in the Sun Belt, and I'm going to try to turn them into a powerhouse. Like, I'm not going to play Ohio State, I think, for a long time.
Hey, you know what? As a MAC school goer, I went to Miami, Ohio. I appreciate that. So, Matt, I've seen your website. Why don't you tell people where we can find you and all your work as we follow the story?
You bet. You can find my work at extrapointsmb.com. I write a newsletter called Extra Points, which covers off-the-field stories in the college sports industry. So that does mean I write a lot about video games, but I also write a lot about stuff like conference realignment and labor law and NIL and television valuations and all those other kind of behind-the-scenes things that help dictate who's good at college football. So if you are interested in those kind of things or just the video game, you can find that at extrapointsmb.com.
Awesome. Matt Brown, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. And we will definitely stay tuned to your work as the EA Sports launch date comes closer. Now, one of the people most excited for this release date is Donovan Edwards, one of the cover athletes. He said some of the best moments of his childhood involved playing EA Sports college football games with his best friend, the Michigan running back, coming off a 104 rushing yard, 2-touchdown performance in the national title game. And recently, he caught up with our own Brandon Marcello.
Well, I'm not sure anybody's having a better off season than you. You're a Michigan guy. and
Michigan
you're on the
man.
cover. You're coming off a national championship, and we're going into a new era of college football. You know that
Yeah.
NIL, but also the playoffs expanding, and it's an exciting time, and it's got to be fun to be part of the face of that, man. And so, congratulations.
Yeah, let me give one story too.
Yeah.
So I was telling, so one of the guys, Ty from EA, he said, keeping it secret. I was like, Ty, I told him like a couple of days ago, I was like, look, man, I ain't gonna lie to you. I probably told my well-known friends, trusted agents, that's what Jim Harbaugh is saying right there. So I called Blake when like I got the call, and I was like, man, this is just crazy because like, like me, I always think like I can do better, I'm very hard on myself, right? And I told him, I was like, I don't even deserve to be on here. Like I didn't even have a great season to even be on the cover of this game. And basically what he told me was, like I deserve it. I've been through a lot growth of mentally and emotionally and spiritually that God has blessed me and I deserve to be on it. And he told me that there's no doubt that I'm going to have a big season in this upcoming year. Um, so yeah, I don't know why I wanted to say that, but yeah,
Well, listen,
he helped me out with it,
yeah,
having the confidence
I
to
hope
go
you
and
enjoy
deserve
it and you take it to heart and you allow yourself to enjoy it now. But
it. Great.
don't stop working hard, man. You know
That's
that.
right. I might tell Coach Bellamy one time, and so he might say something to me. I was like, "Were you on the cover, EA?" Oh, okay. I thought not.
Cool seeing the humility there from Edwards. Brandon Marcello now joining me from after, I guess, ACC annual spring meetings at Amelia Island. I got to say, I grew up going there, Brandon. I was super jealous to see you got that assignment. But we've been talking about the EA Sports college football game. It's back after a decade. What are your initial thoughts? How excited are you for this?
I was a hardcore college football gamer to begin with a decade or so ago. I'm kind of an old head. I'm an older guy. But this is the first video game in my life, I think, that I have purchased without actually seeing any gameplay footage. And I can't wait to see that gameplay that we're going to get Friday when it looks like they released the first official trailer. I'm really excited. And, Matt Brown said this earlier on the show. Everybody worried about the microtransactions and all that stuff. We reported previously, and so has Matt, I believe, that those are going to be kind of held to as much of a minimum as possible. You're not going to see them as frequent out there in the part of the gameplay as maybe you've seen in the Madden games and other EA titles out there. So I wouldn't be too worried about that going into this July.
All right. Well, as much of the gaming world, sporting world celebrates the return of this video games, we go to the opposite side of the spectrum with Dabo Swinney, who is still operating a decade ago before the boom of NIL and the transfer portal. Clemson is one of 4 schools that did not take a transfer player this spring. Those other 3 schools were service academies. But he's put in the classic Swinney spin on it, saying, we just signed a whole class of guys who will transfer in from high school. Brandon, how do you feel about this?
Well, he's been kind of on this train for a while and has been very public about it. And I spoke to him one-on-one at ACC Spring Meetings, and we discussed the portal a little bit. And he's really kind of sick of the narrative out there that, hey, Clemson stinks now. Since the transfer portal became a thing, they just haven't been as good as they have been. And he shared some really interesting comments, and I'll read one here. There's a lot of storms around college football right now, but we're kind of anchored, and it's not that we're not affected, he said, but we don't get washed out to sea and swim for our lives. We're fortunate because we've been established and we've been consistent for a long, long time. We're still about the same things we were 16 years ago. And I think that is the hook there that you just mentioned, is that they haven't really changed their ways very much over the years at Clemson, but college football has changed. And in that 3-year span that the portal has become a thing, and so is NIL, Clemson hasn't been to the playoff. They've struggled. They won less than 10 games for the first time in more than a decade at Clemson this past season. But they've been real close to getting back into the playoff conversation. And as he told me, he goes, listen, we made the college football playoff 6 straight years. We won the national championship twice in a 3-year span. We've been close to getting back to that. And he said this is another quote. He goes, there's been a perception, a narrative that gets drummed up that we stink. We're no good because we didn't make a Final Four. We made it 6 years in a row. It's hard. 30 wins in 3 years. We've won the league. It's all good. It's all part of your journey. I think he's very frustrated with hearing all this talk out there. And also, let's remember this about Dabo Swinney. He's been criticized in the past for other practices in his recruiting philosophy, doing things that no one else does. Right now, it's not taking any kids out of the transfer portal, which might end up being hurtful here. We'll see. But remember, he's also a guy that does not do any official visits in the spring and summer. And they were getting a lot of questions about that, like why you don't do it, why not change your ways? Recruiting's the lifeblood of a program. And he says, well, we feel good about the type of kids we bring in. We bring in a different type of kid. And with this, he's sticking with that. He believes that they want players that come in from high school, they stay there, and they develop. And he also mentioned to me, the proof is in the pudding there because we have the highest graduation success rate in all of college football and one of the best rates over the last 20 years. He says we're not going to go away from that. We're bringing kids into the program. We're going to develop them, and that's how we're going to win college football games. And he believes that they are going to get over that quote-unquote hump and get back to the college football playoff sooner than later. But Dabo, I think, the one we're seeing today, a little bit frustrated with hearing all this outside talk. Let me run my program is the way he's saying all this, and the proof will be in the pudding in the coming years. We'll see. I think they got to start showing the signs of that this year because 3 straight years that have been under their expectations have coincided with the transfer portal. They got to buck that trend and do it now.
You can definitely understand his frustration, but the best coaches have adapted, so we'll see how he does so. 2 other coaches needing to adapt this year. You spoke with them. Rhett Lashley entering his 3rd year with SMU, but first year in the ACC, and then Manny Diaz taking over Duke after making Penn State one of the best defenses in the country. What did you learn from your conversations with them?
Yeah, SMU is fascinating to me because, listen, this is a athletic department that's pretty much bought its way into being a Power 4 school now by joining the ACC, by giving away their revenue shares over the next 7 years. And that's a program that has such great money and finances around it that the NIL program is fantastic. And with that, they've been able to go get some great depth through the transfer portal. They brought in 20 kids this offseason. Most of them, I think all but one, were Power 4 school kids. 13 of those 20 are offensive or defensive linemen. They are building themselves to be bigger and stronger in the trenches compared to what they were in the group of 5. They're playing big boy ball now. It's going to be fascinating. You saw the schools that joined the Big 12, for example, last year, and none of them were able to break over 500. The best team won 6 games, but they lost 7 at UCF. Rhett Lashley does not want his program to be one of those stories where they go from an 11-win season last year in the All-American Conference to below 500 in the ACC. Their schedule's very interesting. Their very first ACC home game is against Florida State, the defending conference champions. Talk about a gigantic, amazing scene we're going to see in Dallas. But he feels like they have built the type of depth they need, especially in the trenches, through the transfer portal. We'll see this upcoming fall. I can't wait to see it. And then Manny Diaz going into his first year at Duke, back into the ACC after what happened at Miami. He's got some really good pieces left over from the Mike Elko era. And he was telling me that they really kind of bring different types of kids there that really value getting a degree in that Duke University type of education. He wants that offense to continue to be kind of more wide open. They want to throw the ball. He says, we're going to be the type of Steve Spurrier teams you've seen in the past, where we're throwing the ball, spreading it out, playing an exciting brand of football to attract kids there at Duke. It could be a little bit of growing pains this year for them. They lose Riley Leonard to Notre Dame in the transfer portal, but Manny Diaz, he's going to have that defense ready. We know that. Penn State, in just his 1 year there, had that thing up in the top 5 quality. Everywhere he goes, the defense improves. Duke probably going to lean a little bit more on that this season.
He'll play his former school, Miami, November 2nd. Now, this time last year, Brandon, we had the Magnificent 7. The drama this time, not so much, but we're still trying to piece together the Florida-Clemson ACC marriage. Is that going to last? What did you learn at the annual meetings?
I think that it seems inevitable that Florida State and/or Clemson are going to leave the ACC, and it's just a matter of time when the legal process runs itself out. The ACC is just going to do everything it can to not settle this lawsuit or lawsuits out of court. They're going to try and let this thing go on. But as people have been telling us at 247 Sports and again at the ACC Spring Meetings on Background, that, listen, we're just kind of running out of ground ball here. We're waiting to see what all happens. And unless the ACC just suddenly conjures up a bunch of extra money to give to Florida State or Clemson, I don't think that's going to save the conference from losing two of their blue bloods. But Florida State has been especially aggressive, as we know. Michael Alford, their athletics director, has been very front and center on all this, talking to the media publicly about all of this. He did reiterate, listen, we've never said we want to leave the conference, but listen, actions are speaking louder than words. The Board of Trustees have said as much. One trustee saying back in August, give us an exit plan here within the next year. And guess what? August 2024 is right on the calendar, and we're speeding toward that direction with all those lawsuits going on. Is this salvageable? Jim Phillips, the commissioner, was asked that. So was Michael Alford. They're optimistic on the ACC side, but again, it just seems like the clock's ticking toward the inevitable, and the inevitable is Florida State and Clemson leaving and going shopping for new conferences.
All right, potential chaos on the way. And by the way, Marcello has a great article explaining all of it over on cbssports.com if you want to read more. Thanks, Brandon. And for more on the spring meetings, off-season news, and look-aheads to fall camp, head over to 247sports.com and subscribe. Our team of reporters giving you exclusive information that you won't be able to find anywhere else. That's only on 247sports.com. All right, we are 100 days away from the 2024 season kicking off. So we're going to spotlight a few teams here as we count down the days, starting with Arkansas. Sam Pittman may be on one of the hottest seats of all college coaches this season, coming off a 4-8 season in 2023. What can he do this year? Our Trey Biddy of hogsports.com joins me now with more. Trey, tough schedules are nothing new for Arkansas, but this is got to be one of the toughest they've seen in Pittman's time there. How is he handling this?
Yeah, it's very difficult, obviously, being the Arkansas coach. As he would say, somebody's trying to get me fired. He says that just about every year. There was a stat that came out in the last 10 years. Arkansas had played more top 25 teams than anybody in the SEC with 53. I think Missouri was on the other side of that with 30. So that just gives you an idea of how tough Arkansas' schedule has been. I mean, when you look at it, you start off, you're home away from home in Little Rock against UAPB in Little Rock. And then in week 2, you go to Oklahoma State, where Mike Gundy's in his 20th year. They've got a 7th-year senior at quarterback, and Arkansas is trying so much new stuff with a new quarterback and stuff like that. That's going to be a really, really big game. You come back home against UAB in week 3, and then you're on the road at Auburn, Texas A&M, and Arlington. I mean, this is not a schedule that's set up for a 4-8 team to have a lot of belief. I mean, you really got to, now you could overcome some obstacles, obviously, and build some momentum, but it's really difficult. Now, I would say, like, look at some other teams that Arkansas plays annually, like Missouri, for example. Missouri's going to be a preseason top 10 team. I've got their schedule pulled up here. They play Missouri State, Buffalo, Boston College in Columbia, Vanderbilt in Columbia. Their first tough game is Texas A&M in College Station, and then they play UMass. I mean, that's a schedule that's set up to keep a team in the top 10. Look at Ole Miss, Furman, Middle Tennessee, Wake Forest, Georgia Southern, Kentucky, South Carolina. I mean, these are schedules that are going to keep these teams in the top 10, build some belief and momentum behind them, while Arkansas's, on the road, Oklahoma State, on the road, Auburn, at Arlington against Texas A&M. They don't even have a really good home game until Tennessee, and that's October 5th. So the air could be let out of the balloon by then. But if they can overcome it, then obviously there's a little more manageable second half if they can get to that point of the season with any momentum.
Now, 3 of the 4 teams on Arkansas's schedule weren't even in the SEC the last time Bobby Petrino was with the team. He is obviously just one of many storylines to watch this year. So what should we be watching for with the Hogs?
When last season came to an end, and the way it was unfolding, they just couldn't put together wins, and they go 4-8. Not just 4-8, the way it ended with just getting blown out at home against Auburn, and then the final game of the season against Missouri, getting blown out in that one too. Just kind of letting go of the rope after losing some close games early on. You started wondering, like, how do they keep Sam Pittman? How do they avoid the toxicity that's going to come with this offseason? And I just didn't see how they could possibly do it. I'm not sure that there is another hire for offensive coordinator that Arkansas could have made, aside from Bobby Petrino, that would have brought this fan base back on. And because you're kind of looking at it like, everybody's like, everybody's down on Pittman. They're not winning and stuff. And then it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, let's see what Bobby Petrino can do. Because the last thing that Arkansas fans remember about Bobby Petrino, aside from the incident and the way it ended with the motorcycle and all that stuff, is him winning 10 games in 2010 and then winning 11 games in 2011. And then it all unraveled, and Arkansas football hasn't been the same since. So, along with this brutal schedule that Arkansas has and seems to have every single year, Bobby Petrino coming back to Fayetteville is one of the wildest things. I mean, when you think about it, the way the football season ended, you go out and hire a guy like Bobby Petrino coming back to Fayetteville, something I never thought I would have saw it happen. And then you finish the basketball season with Eric Musselman going to USC, and what do? You hire John Calipari. I'm not sure there's two bigger, more exciting hires when you put them together in college sports. And so those are huge storylines. Bringing Bobby Petrino back to Arkansas is just wild, really, and I'm anxious to see how things do. I think the offense will be much better. So the problem is, I think everybody else in the middle, lower tier of the SEC is also going to be better. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exciting times for sure with both of those hires. Another challenge ahead for Pittman is he's going to have the first quarterback battle he's had in his 4 years in Fayetteville. So quarterbacks included, what are some players we need to keep an eye on?
Yeah, Taylor Green, I think it was obvious day one of spring football, like, okay, this guy's different. He's the starting quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Matt Jones, who was at Arkansas several years ago, a long strider at 6'6". A guy who can be very accurate. I thought he had a really good start to the spring, maybe had a little bit of a lull in the middle and then picked it up again. But he was obviously the starting quarterback. He was the former Mountain West Conference Freshman of the year, year before last. Last season, he was the Mountain West Conference Championship Game MVP. So he's got some good pedigree with him. Jaquindon Jackson, I think, is another guy at running back, the transfer from Utah. This is a guy that strikes me as someone with a chip on his shoulder that still feels like he's got something to prove. Everything I would ask him, he would kind of turn it into everybody's against me, in the spring press conferences and stuff. So I feel like he's a guy with something to prove. And Luke Has at tight end. Luke Has, I think he was on his way to being a freshman All-American last year. He was hurt in week 5. He was coming off a really big game against LSU. But I think he could be possibly the best tight end in the country from a number standpoint. He's going to be like Arkansas's go-to receiver. So watch out for Luke Has on offense. And then you flip it to the defensive side of the ball. Landon Jackson is a guy that's popped up on many way too early mock drafts in the first round. In fact, CBS had him in their mock draft in the first round at defensive end. 6'7", 282 pounds, really big, prototypical guy that can get after the quarterback. Jalen Braxton, I think, is another guy that's really kind of overlooked a little bit. He was a freshman last year at cornerback, started 6 games for him. He was hurt the last 2 games, but he's a guy with a lot of ability. The Florida game, I believe in week 10 when Arkansas went down there, Arkansas scored on their opening drive. Jalen Braxton had a strip and took it back, a strip 6, to put Arkansas up 14-0 and really build a ton of momentum for Arkansas as they went on to win that game in Gainesville. So there's some talent on Arkansas, and I think overall the roster is better than it was last year. I think the defense will be comparable to what it was. I think the offense will be better. But as I said, again, when you look at the middle tier, lower tier of the SEC, I just feel like everybody's going to be better. So how much better is Arkansas going to be than they were last year?
Arkansas opens the season August 29th. That's Trey Biddy with the latest. Thank you, Trey. And for more on the Razorbacks throughout the entire season, check out hogsports.com. Trey Biddy and his entire staff have got you covered through spring ball, summer headlines, fall camp, and of course, kickoff in August. Coming up on the 247 Sports YouTube channel, a new episode of Unfiltered with Carl Reed and Smoke Dixon. This time they're talking to UCLA first-year head coach Deshaun Foster. You can watch that this Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe, turn on those notifications so you don't miss it. And that's going to do it for us today on 247 Sports Live. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.